course, is saying Andrew's going to switch gears now to the 15-time major champs. Time for Tiger Tracker on this Monday. I'll tell you what, I watched this video of Tiger. This is the hay at Pebble Beach, and my phone, I was like, is that really Tiger swinging? And it is. I didn't recognize the hat, the color pattern. Maybe it was a little bit unfamiliar to my eye, but that golf swing, Eamon, there he is.
Anytime we can see Tiger Woods swing a golf club, it's welcome news, Damon. We don't get to see it very often these days. We haven't seen it since he withdrew the Masters earlier this year. Yeah,
this, of course, is Tiger's Junior Invitational, hosts boys and girls annually out at Pebble Beach. And, of course, the big thought is, does this mean Tiger's going to come back and play? But the question that was kind of burning around social media and elsewhere was about Tiger potentially being the Ryder Cup captain in 2025 for the United States. Davis Love III had this quote: "We've got to call Tiger Woods and ask him. I think if he wants it, obviously it's Tiger's job to have, but it's kind of his call. I would say I hate to put pressure on him, but it's kind of his call." Obviously, with some guys out, I guess he's the next logical choice. Eamon, I feel like it's Tiger's job if he wants it, considering who he is and what he means to the game.
In a way, you could make an argument that Tiger has to take the job because the Ryder Cup team for the United States, I don't think has ever been in worse shape than it is right now.
Ever?
Ever. And I include the debacle after Glen Eagles in that, which created the task force, because the task force has now put the United States Ryder Cup team in a lousy position. It's created this buddy trip dynamic where Zach Johnson on Tuesday in Rome in a press conference essentially said that the 6 qualifiers on the team had the most influence in determining who the 6 captains' picks were. And that's not necessarily the best way to get the best result out of a team, is to keep half the guys comfortable, to make sure they play with their pals or who they're comfortable with.
But they were so uncomfortable in 2014. Watson barely spoke to Phil.
Yeah, but that was acrimony. Now you've got apathy. And
so they've gone too far the other side. Okay.
I do think that they've taken out all of the acrimony, and they're trying to imitate Europe, but missing the point. And Europe always had a unity of purpose in the Ryder Cup, and that purpose was kicking the butt of the PGA Tour. It was never continent versus continent. It was tour versus tour. The European guys had a chip on their shoulder for years about how they were treated coming over here all the way back to the Seve Ballesteros era. And that was their goal. They were unified around one goal. They were never unified really as personalities. There were times they were at each other's throats in the European locker room. And what the American team is trying to do is create this idea that they are all there. There's great comedy between them. They're all buddies. They're all pals. That's not necessarily the best way to get a team. And Tiger Woods strikes me as the kind of guy who'd be looking for a result and would not be afraid of kind of breaking up some of these friendships that seem to dictate who plays with who.
What about the talisman factor of a Seve Ballesteros that the Americans don't seem to have? Maybe Tiger Woods gives them that, not to mention he won a U.S. Open at Bethpage Black in 2002. He's Tiger Woods. I see your Seve Ballesteros. I raise you Tiger Woods, who may not be the guy who can win a 16th major anymore, but he still is the guy that so many of the players who would occupy that team room grew up rooting for and watching.
True, but you would also have to question whether or not the current culture within the Ryder Cup on either side lends itself as much to that. The Europeans really do leverage that kind of Seve Ballesteros image and talismanic effect from 30 years ago. They really lay it on. Sometimes they lay it on a little bit thick, but it is a unifying force. The American team doesn't really have that. And if you have a culture where there is a debate going on internally and externally on the team as to whether or not they are fairly compensated for being there that week, I'm not so sure that just seeing Tiger Woods roll up and give a speech is going to bring that kind of unity to that team. Maybe they're not looking for that unity. I don't necessarily argue that they need unity on the team, but what they don't need is a team that is dictated by people choosing their buddies to go play with them.
I think Tiger Woods is all about winning. And I think that obviously Zach Johnson did the best he could. We spent weeks and months leading up to the Ryder Cup talking about how every I would be dotted, T would be crossed, how meticulous Zach Johnson is and was as a player. Are you saying that he left a few stones turned, as it were?
I think Zach was not the kind of personality who was likely to discomfort his players. And he said on our show here that he thought the players ought to have a strong voice in choosing the team. That's one way of doing it. It is not one that is necessarily designed to prove with great results.
Yeah.
And I don't think it did in Rome. There were decisions made in terms of partnerships who went out there who were ill-suited to each other and to the format. And Zach ultimately has to own that.
Or it could just be that the Americans keep losing the all-important foursomes, or it could just be that we're now in a home-and-home situation where the Americans seem to get the job done on home soil and the Europeans get the job done on their home soil.
Well, if you keep sending out your worst ball striker in foursomes, that's a good way to put yourself behind the eight ball.
Touche, Amy Lynch, touche. Well, folks, sticking with Tiger, time now for some good video just because. And that will follow this. Davis Love with our social question says Tiger is the next logical choice to be the Ryder Cup captain in 2025. Who do you think it will be? Tiger? Phil? I mean, there was a time when Phil was earmarked as the guy for Bethpage to be the captain in 2025. Who do you like? Larry Nelson, perhaps? And now, speaking of Tiger, some good video just because this was during Tiger's TGR Junior Invitational, the aforementioned 11-year-old.
Here's a kid who's having a better day than you or I will ever have, Damon. Makes an ace at Pebble Beach with all of his buddies.
That is a remarkable shot, and the celebration as well was just brilliant.
And he gets a congrats from the greatest of all time. And there was a